Perfidious Albion, an introduction to the British Illuminati. A theory rose among Protestant and Reformed Christian circles in the 18th century, known as British Israelism. This stated that the 10 lost tribes of Israel are literally ancestors to the modern-day Celts and Anglo-Saxons of Northwest Europe and America. The movement saw a continuation of the biblical throne of David through the British crown via the old Scottish and Irish kings, and actually believes that the stone of destiny that modern-day monarchs are actually coronated upon is actually Jacob's pillar, as recorded in the Old Testament book of Genesis. Therefore, the House of Windsor is actually the House of David. But more controversially, according to British Israel teaching, the modern-day Jews are descendants of the Khazars of Russia, these being known as Ashkenazian Jews, rather than being of true Abrahamic descent. The true Israelites being only 5% of modern-day Jewry, according to this teaching. This was also advocated by the left-wing Jewish historian Arthur Koestler in his much celebrated book, The 13th Tribe. Some British Israel Christians are also known for their study of biblical pyramidology, a view which sees the Great Pyramid of Giza as a prophetic chronological record of history leading up into the second coming of Christ, and also believe that the zodiac cycle is actually a stellar revelation and prototype of the gospel itself. Others believe that Druidism is actually descended as well from the Hebrew patriarchal religion. Christ himself is believed to have journeyed to Britain in his youth, visiting Glastonbury in Somerset with his uncle, who was later known as Joseph of Arimathea. Later, this very same Joseph established the first Christian mission and church in Glastonbury. British Israel teaches that where Britain is descended from the biblical tribes of Judah, Dan and Ephraim, the Americans are actually descended from the tribe of Manasseh, or the 13th tribe. The symbol of the all-seeing eye, which goes back to Egyptian mythology and which is featured on the American dollar bill, also is capable of a British Israel interpretation. A cryptic indignation reads, "New Order of the Ages and out of many one," and is dated 1776, both the date when the United States came into being, and actually, according to the Masoretic text of the Bible, when the Tower of Babel, or Babylon, was established, according to the book of Genesis. Many of the founding fathers of America were Freemasons, and were actually practicing deists, and had the aim of forming a Masonic republic. What is referred to on the American dollar bill is also what President George Bush Sr. referred to as the birth of a new world order, implying the formation of a one world government. Many Americans are now becoming alarmed by the extent to which the United Nations and other globalist vested interests are playing a very influential but covert political role in undermining the sovereignty of the USA. Also, the spread of multinational and corporate power via multinational corporations and financial banking oligarchies are threatening to undermine any illusion of American democracy. But also in 1776, this was a date when the Illuminati was formed, actually on May the 1st, by an Adam Weishaupt. He had a Jewish background, was trained by the Society of Jesus, the Roman Catholic Jesuit order, but converted to Protestantism for a while, but ultimately felt inspired to start a new religion based on deism and Freemasonry rather than biblical Christianity. Many would contend that the aims and influence of the Illuminati is very much with us today, particularly within the Skull and Bone Society in America, which is very influential within the American presidency and the Bohemian Grove fraternity. The Illuminati aimed at a world society that would ultimately abolish nation states, private property, the family and the Christian faith, and replace it with a world based on social Darwinism, secular humanism and a one world religious syncretism, the universal aim of Freemasonry. It is believed that the Illuminati were behind the French Revolution and the American War of Independence, both of which struck at the heart of the European monarchy in favour of a free republic. And one might also add the First and Second World Wars and the Russian Revolution, which destroyed the Russian monarchy. Interesting that it was formed on May the 1st, when the Illuminati were officially launched, which would become International Workers' Day, associated with the new and revolutionary atheistic creeds of communism and socialism. Another hammer blown at absolute monarchy, focused mainly in Russia. Or was it? According to former MI6 operative and writer John Coleman, author of the Committee of 300, The Conspirators' Hierarchy, both Wall Street in the USA and British intelligence secretly funded the Russian Bolsheviks into power, as they would later Hitler and the Nazis. They actually helped leading communist intellectuals, including its supposed founder Karl Marx, who had connections to British aristocracy through his marriage to Jenny von Westphalen, who was related to the Scottish Dukes of Argyll and the Campbells. Marx actually had patronage at the British Library for his writing of Des Capital. But it is stated that British intelligence actually were behind the entry of Trotsky into Russia. Further on, according to John Coleman, the Committee of 300 is a secret society of top royalty, politicians, businessmen, economists, military commanders, intellectuals, scientists and religious authorities who work towards the Illuminati plan via another organisation, the Round Table. This Arthurian symbolism suggests British influence, dating from the British Empire, which included such figures as Cecil Rhodes, H.G. Wells, and particularly the wolves in sheep's clothing Fabian socialists. It was hoped that this would provide a basis for a world government based in the British Empire. Most people believe that the British Empire is long gone, but Coleman suggests the empire is still very much with us in covert power, its overt power being simply replaced by this hidden, secretive, showery power behind the scenes. The Round Table network of the Committee of 300 is made up of organisations like the Council of Foreign Relations, the Trilateral Commission, the Bilderberg Group, the Rockefeller Group, the World Trade Organization, the 101 Club of the Isles, the Club of Rome, and the various international intelligence agencies. Last but no means least, the Royal Institute of International Affairs. So where did all this have its origins? Coleman says the Committee of 300 originated with the black nobility, which were 13th century leading bankers and members of the European royalty, the Knights Templar, etc. They were able to gain immense wealth and power via usury and speculation, establishing self-supporting structures all over the world, Some of the big players till this day have been bloodline families like the Warburgs, the Habsburg, who descended from the Merovingian bloodline, and especially the British royal families, which are related to the German Venetian Galafs via Queen Victoria, the most notorious allegedly of the black nobility, the black being symbolic of the colour of their deeds. These intermarrying bloodlines and royal dynasties, with links to heads of state and international banking oligarchs, control the world today. According to Coleman, the actual head is the Queen of England herself, most of her power being historically derived from the British East India Company and its illegal drug trafficking in China during the Opium Wars, and the Virginia Company, which according to David Icke technically owns the United States from behind the scenes. Indeed, 33 out of 44 US presidents to date have been of British and European royal or aristocratic descent. Further on, there is a network of secret societies such as the Order of the Garter, the Priory of Sion, the Knights of St. John of Jerusalem, and the Knights of Malta, and the Order of the Bath, amongst others, who have powerful links to Masonic associations and are also interlocking with these other organisations. One of the main desires and aims of all these groups is the United States of Europe via the European Union, which is actually a revival of the Roman Empire. This will have its own monarchy, with either being the Catholic Habsburgs or a Romanised British monarch as figurehead. The Roman Catholic Church and the papacy, via the ecumenical movement and the World Council of Churches, will form a one world religious spirituality and centralised religious body. In essence, this is the mysticism of Freemasonry, which believes all religions are one and all paths lead to God, or at least Rome. A federal Europe would be formed from the current European Economic Community. This will be instrumental to the global elite in its centralisation of European economics and political power, and this will be a stepping stone to a United Nations One World Government being implemented economically through agreements like GATT, NAFTA and the MAI. These have been created through bodies like the World Trade Organization, the World Bank, the IMF, which is the International Monetary Fund. These all seek to undermine the sovereignty of the nation state through free trade capitalism. Indeed, a reactionary form of peace is being imposed around the world, the peace of the superstate United Nations and the creation of a monoculture, melting pot of all races and nations, actually a repeat of the biblical Tower of Babel. Through a world recession, these bodies could be instrumental in the collapse of the world economy to further implement a cashless free society. Many in the environmental and peace movements are likely to welcome the formation of a single world authority with the power to stop racial conflict between nations, limit the possibility of a nuclear war, end third world debt, and deal with environmental issues. Interesting though that some of these issues are very near to the British royal family, who seem to be falling in line with this so-called global warming agenda and this UN overpopulation agenda. But according to many researchers, particularly David Icke, both the Green and the Peace movement, so-called, have been hijacked, particularly the global warming agenda, and these are being infiltrated to play out games and roles which the global elites have planned in advance. Even rock music and contemporary hedonistic youth culture, particularly rap, etc., etc., are means by which the masses are controlled, distracted and kept heavily sedated. A contemporary version perhaps of Rome's bread and circuses. Also pivotal to this is the Gate Pyramid in Giza. This is very important to international British Freemasonry and the global elite, and it is represented on the American dollar bill. I believe that this is leading to the formation in Israel of a one world government and religion. The scriptures will reveal that just before the Lord Jesus Christ returns to unite the 12 tribes of Israel and set up his 1,000-year reign of peace, there will arise an Antichrist figure. Traditionally, this has been believed to be either the institution and succession of the Roman emperors through the Catholic popes, or a future Messiah figure that the Jews in Israel receive as their saviour and spiritual leader. Many of these themes touch upon the infamous document known as the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, which has a rather dubious history, as it has encouraged violent anti-Semitism, which I must emphatically stress I am completely opposed to. Nevertheless, it is an important document to read, as it does provide a much background to what we are talking about and what is actually going on in the world today. It's possible that it is what is known as a pious fraud, that it was leaking important information into the mainstream, but isn't actually an authentic document as such. Nevertheless, many of its themes are authentic. But I believe the last two wars were instrumental in creating the modern day state of Israel. Instrumental in this has been very much the Rothschild and Rockefeller banking dynasties, which have very important links to the British Crown. One line of speculative biblical prophecy would say that if the British crown is indeed the throne of Judah or the throne of David, this is believed to be the very throne which the Lord Jesus Christ will sit upon in Jerusalem when he returns. If so, there could be a diabolical satanic plot for the Antichrist to usurp this seat in opposition to Christ and claim worship for himself alone before this happens. According to various elements and strands of biblical prophecy, the next world war will involve the Middle East, particularly Islam and Zionism, Russia and China. Is it possible that in the last days that a future apostate British monarch in allegiance with the Roman Catholic Church and the Zionist state of Israel, backed by a fascist European superstate, a revived Roman Empire, will satisfy the biblical criterions for the end times Antichrist? Interesting that if you take the Great Pyramid of Giza, it actually measures 5,766 inches high. This date is coming up very soon. In the Hebraic calendar, we are reaching that year in 2015 to 16, a date which David Icke has also said he believes will see the emergence and collapse of the New World Order in its finality. And this is only a few years after the 2012 date. Well, the year 2015 to 16 is this very year according to the Hebraic calendar, which synchronises with the placing of the capstone on the Great Pyramid of Giza. This is a very important date to Freemasonry this year, and this can be shown on the American dollar bill, as it is dated from 1776. The actual height of the Great Pyramid, corresponding to the years of the biblical Hebrew calendar, this will be the year when the capstone is placed upon the Great Pyramid of Giza, and the new world order of the ages, the plan will be finally completed. Interesting that from the year 2014 to the year 2015 in September, when we enter that year, there will be several blood red moons, several lunar and solar eclipses that all fall on Hebraic holy days like Passover, the Feast of Trumpets, the Feast of Tabernacles, during this 18-month period from 2014 leading up to the Day of Atonement in September 2015, when we come to that fateful year of 5,677. There should be such an occurrence. This will be the last time this occurs for over 100 years. The only other times when there's been such an occurrence was actually in the year 47 and 48, when the state of Israel come into being, and 1967 when the Israelis overtook the Temple Mount. Interesting that 70 years being a biblical generation from 1947, when the UN gave the mandate for the creation of the State of Israel, which actually happened in May 48, brings us to 2017, which is around about this very time, and also a biblical jubilee period, which is 49 years. You can count literally 49 years from when when the Israeli state took the Temple Mount, which was June the 6th, 1967, and it brings us up to September 22nd, 2015, 22nd, 23, which is actually the biblical date for the Hebraic festival of the Day of Atonement. And according to biblical tradition, this is the festival where the Israel will finally convert to Jesus. So this is all synchronizing very much with 2012 and the 2016-17. So I think we are imminently at the era of the biblical apocalypse, and the British Illuminati are very much a pivotal figure in the emergence of the New World Order and the reign of the Antichrist.
Well, that was Wayne John Sturgeon talking there about a fascinating subject, the British Illuminati. I was a bit puzzled though, Wayne. You've been talking about 2016, but we're all led to believe that 2012 is the big year. So is that something we should be thinking about more than 2012?
Well, I'd just like to clarify, I did make a slight mistake in my dates. The Pyramid of Giza in inches is actually 5,776 inches high and not 5,766, so there's just a slight error there. Now what's interesting about this is that according to pyramidology, you know, the inches can represent periods of time. Okay, the American dollar bill is dated from 1776, and there is a school of thought that this is leading up to this year 5776 according to the Hebraic calendar. That's the Jewish calendar, which is actually the year from September. The Jewish calendar runs from September to September. It's the kind of like, it's a bit like American when they talk about in the fall, you know, the autumn.
It's almost like our academic year, we kind of start in September. Yeah,
that's right. They're sort of the, shall I say, Hebraic year starts in September. Well, in 2015 to 16, that actually is the year 5,776. So there's a correspondence with that year in the Hebrew calendar to the actual height of the Pyramid of Giza when the capstone is placed upon it.
Oh, right.
Do you see?
Yeah.
So it is believed, and there's some evidence to suggest that the Masonic fraternities are working towards the year 2015 and 16 to be the year when the capstone is placed upon the Pyramid of Giza and the New World Order of the Ages is officially inaugurated. Now, what's interesting about this year 2016 is that people like David Icke have said that is the year when it's all going to kick off. And also, if you go on YouTube, it's talking that by the year 2016-17 is when there will be the widespread introduction of a cashless society and a microchip population.
If our listeners want to go to YouTube, is there any particular search terms they can put in?
If you just put microchip 2017, it will come up.
Yeah.
And this was not from conspiracy theory websites. This was actually mainstream CBN News, but it's actually on YouTube. That by 2017 they're hoping to have microchip population, microchip population and a cashless society. So there's an interesting synchronicity working here that sort of links the American dollar bill, Great Pyramid of Giza, the banking system. And you asked me about 2012. Well, I think 2012 is also a very pivotal date. According to biblical prophecy, the Great Tribulation, if you like, the apocalypse will last a period of 42 months or 3.5 years. Some people say 7 years, but if you count from the a period of the spring of 2012 up until the autumn of 2015, that is 3.5 years. Okay, so that could be the time of the Great Tribulation, and that would link 2012 to this year again, 5776, which actually starts September of 2015. It's that year into 2016, you see.
Okay.
Now what's interesting about that is that coincides with these 7 lunar and solar eclipses that all fall on biblical holy days, like the Day of Atonement, Day of Tabernacles and the Passover.
So would that suggest they planned this ahead a long way in order to, if they had very good astronomers themselves, they could have looked ahead?
Absolutely, yeah. And I mean, it says in the Bible that the moon will turn blood red and the sun will be darkened before the day of the Lord. And that in Genesis, the sun and the moon are to discern the times of the signs, or the signs of the times.
Again, we can clarify this blood red. It is a real astronomical phenomenon. I have seen it myself. It's when I think there's a lunar eclipse, the Earth's shadow falls on the moon, and you get the orange of the sunset reflecting onto the moon. Yes. The dark side. I'm getting a bit of a horn. The dark side of the moon, which is not the dark side on the other side of the moon. It's the moon when it's, I can't think, the opposite of a full moon reflecting the sun sets. You get an orangey, reddish kind of moon, which is quite a lovely thing to look at. But obviously, it can be quite scary. It can look like a sort of a weird sun rising, in the sky, but in a night sky. It's very strange. The moon can look very, very weird. You can see it coming up all sorts of funny angles, sometimes low on the horizon, and if you had a supernatural way of looking at it, or in ancient times, it would seem very, very powerful and godlike, I should think, and I can see why they use that as a symbol.
Well, David Icke has now elaborated on the significance of the moon. I don't know if he's aware, but there is a biblical precedent for his theory about the moon having some kind of satanic association. But there is a place in one of the Psalms where it says during the reign of the Messiah the moon will actually pass away.
All right.
So, there seems to be some tradition of the moon having some possible satanic association.
Mm.
Although interestingly, the Hebraic festivals are kind of lunar in origin as well.
Yeah.
But I think it's highly significant that there should be 7 of these blood red moons in a short space of time, literally falling on biblical holy days.
Mm.
Like the Feast of Tabernacles, which represents the second coming, the Day of Atonement, which represents the future conversion of the Jews to Jesus as Messiah, the Feast of Trumpets, which inaugurates the year, and the Passover, which represented the Hebrews coming out of Egypt at the time of the Exodus. But in the Revelation also represents Christians coming out of Babylon during the reign of Antichrist.
Mm.
So all these festivals are during this spring 1914 to autumn 2015, which again brings us to this fateful 5776, and what could be a year pivotal to the British Illuminati and the international Freemasons in putting the capstone on the Pyramid of Giza.
Mm.
But also bearing in mind that the pyramid, which the British Israel believers believe was actually built by Enoch, this actually represents that it's in the Bible that the capstone that the builders rejected has become the chief cornerstone, being Jesus.